Hi, and thanks for downloading this, the 601st episode of the IVMB podcast. The Cubs played a full week of games since our last episode, and we will share some of our thoughts on those games and individual performances. With Bryce Harper signing with the Phillies, we'll assume that the Cubs are done making moves, and we will give our grades for how the Cubs front office did with signings and trades this offseason, and we have some more details on the new TV deal. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Corey, and I am joined by the other two hosts of this podcast.
Hi, it's Andy.
And Kurt.
So we are broadcasting live tonight. We do that to our Facebook page. It's at facebook.com/IVMB podcast, to Twitter, which is at IVMB, and our YouTube channel, which is IVMB.com/YouTube. If you're watching tonight, share your thoughts in the comments and feel free to share or retweet. This is kind of the time of the year that a lot of Cubs fans are waking up from their winter hibernation and starting to look at Cubs content. So if you wouldn't mind, let your friends and family who are Cubs fans know about our podcast. We'd appreciate that. You can subscribe in any podcast app or download the free IVMB iOS or Android app. Okay, so before we get started, two things. I'm going to be in Orlando this week. So if you're listening and you're in that area, I will be going to Friday's Braves-Phillies spring training game with a listener and friend, Josh from Louisiana. So if you're in the area and you want to hang out with a couple of Cubs fans and watch Bryce Harper, we will be there in the left field berm. Also, on opening day, I will be up in Chicago hanging out at G-Man to watch the game, the home opener, not opening day, sorry, the Cubs home opener. I will be at G-Man to watch the game and then also watch Danny Rocket's Bleacher Bum Band. And I know some other listeners are skipping the game to hang out at G-Man. So we'll be over there. Come hang out. And also, we have a new episode of Cultivating Cthulhu out. Michael talks about the Cubs conducting spring training on Catalina Island. Cultivating Cthulhu is our side podcast on Cubs history, and you can find it in all of the podcast apps. Again, it's called Cultivating Cthulhu. So, Kurt, it's time for your scary stat, although I think the scary stat of the week could be that yesterday our podcast turned 10 years old.
That is...
And I think I did the math, and I think if you add up all of like the time that we have spent talking about the Cubs on this podcast, we are coming up on a straight month of talking, which when I figured that out, I was like, oh, it feels like it'd be longer than that.
Is one of us going to have the talk with the podcast pretty soon?
It feels like it.
10 years. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think the more telling part of it is that when we started this thing, I was unmarried and without children.
Right.
And I am now married, I think, and have 3. So it's
and
like
filthy rich.
Yeah. Oh God. Yes. Mostly from this podcast and the 1 month I've spent talking about the Cubs. So at least it's paid off financially. No, that is crazy. 10 years.
Yeah. I was it would be kind of fun. I meant to do this to look back at the players that were on the 25-man or 40-man roster when in 2009 when we started this, and think back to some of those players. I mean, I remember getting excited about
not to.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking about, Marlon Byrd was on that team, right? I mean, that was we were
doing
like
some Muay Thai.
Yeah, we were excited about like Joey Gathright. I don't know if that was 2009, but it was if
not because of his baseball skills, just because he could jump a car.
right.
Oh.
So,
yeah.
I don't mean to take away from your scary stat, Kurt. Sorry.
Well, that's way scarier than this one, but this is not necessarily Cubs. Well, it isn't really Cubs related. But this week's scary stat is $890 million. And if you don't know what that is, that's
how much we've made in the life of this podcast. In 10 years, we've made $890 million.
Well, individually.
Right.
But that's how much money has been committed to 3 players in the last couple of weeks. 260 to Arenado, 300 to Machado, and 330 to Harper. And then just for fun, Ken Rosenthal just reported that the Angels are considering making an offer to Mike Trout for 10 years, $350 million extension. Let's be honest, that's not happening. I mean, he's worth way more than that, but who knows? Let's just, for fun, pretend that it does. And if that were to happen, we'd be talking $1.24 billion to 4 players. And that's an insane amount of money for sure. I
Corey's
do
looking
think
for a button to play a sound effect. Oh
you
no!
could play the scary button, I suppose. But in Corey, in our little text thread, I have to give him credit for the fact that you do have to know that that money comes from somewhere, and it's for the most part goes to owners. And while that feels like a crazy amount of money, don't forget that MLB revenues in 2018 were $10.3 billion, and that was 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And these deals are, 8 to 13 years or whatever. So stretched out over that time. So while it feels like a crazy, insane amount of money to play one player, it really isn't. They're actually undervalued, if
Yep.
you can believe that.
Yep.
So, yeah, you could probably take this scary stat from 2 ways. One, that's an insane amount of money for regular people like us, even though we have that much also.
Right.
But also from the player standpoint, they could argue that they're worth way more. So take it whichever way you want.
Yeah. And we could get into a really long, meandering conversation about these contracts and what players should be making, and what comparing the Bryce Harper deal to other big contracts, but what's the word I'm looking for? Adjusting them to inflation, and that these contracts really aren't as big as previous.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, if you go and you buy a $50-$60 ticket, you didn't buy that to see Tom Ricketts rolling the aisles at the game. You bought it to see whatever marquee player, KB or Rizzo, or in this case Harper. Like, you paid for them, and so there's a pretty strong argument that that's where a good chunk of that money should end up, is in the player's pocket, because that's the product. So yeah, like you said, we could probably do an entire episode on that. But the flip side is, I can see how it's also pretty hard to feel sorry for a guy who was going to make $330 million.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think that's what the owners would like us to think.
Yep.
The owners would like us to think, whoa, boy, that's so much money, and not look at how much money they're making off of the whole thing and off of us. So,
yeah, and MLB has a very long history of taking advantage of players, and it's improved, but it's certainly not probably where it needs to be, and we'll see how that plays out in the next CBA.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that Bryce Harper is like being robbed, but I think there's a lot of minor league players. There's a lot of minor league players that are being robbed right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. True.
But that's another topic too. We want to talk about baseball and on the field stuff and fun stuff. So let's move on. But first, we have a new advertiser for the podcast, and it is ESPN Plus. So if you have cut the cord like the three of us have, and you want access to sports, I honestly think that ESPN Plus is a must-have. So I've had ESPN Plus for about 6 months, and I would say it's well worth the $4.99 a month. You get access to live games, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, NHL. You get so many college football, basketball, baseball, and softball, tons of college sports. You get rugby, cricket, international basketball, and soccer, and you get access to all of the ESPN originals like the 30 for 30s. So ESPN Plus, it's available on all of your supported devices, and you see fewer commercials too, which is really nice. So I think $4.99 a month is a great deal. You can go to ivnv.com/ESPN to sign up. You won't regret it. They have a 7-day free trial. That's how I started. And really, I think I signed up for it. This was before the college football season. I signed up. I saw the list of games I could watch, and I just spot it right then. I didn't wait the 7 days. So you can see the lineup and the on-demand selections and everything. So, and you can cancel at any time, which is one of the perks of being a cord cutter, is that you can say, nope, I don't want to pay for that anymore. But go to ivnv.com/ESPN to sign up. Again, ivnv.com/ESPN. So
I plan on watching some cricket at some point.
yeah, I've tried watching cricket, and I cannot.
Failed?
Yeah,
Tried and failed.
I can't get it. I don't get it. Part of the problem with watching sports that you're just not familiar with is that the commentary doesn't really help you understand the game because they're using so many terms that you're not familiar with. But when Bob from the UK was here and left his cricket set that he brought, I think I maybe learned more in that half hour that we were playing cricket in the mud than I did in trying to watch games, because it doesn't make a lot of sense when I watch it.
They need an educational feed.
Right. I mean, that's a sport. You would think that there would maybe be a demand for that.
Well, plus they're probably, saying all kinds of, sports broadcaster slang, like he really earned his biscuits on that cracker or whatever, like.
All right. It's like listening to like Harold Reynolds. Anyway. Okay. So let's talk about the, this week's games. For me, I'll be honest, it was a busy week for me. I didn't get to listen to very much. I didn't get to watch any at all. And if I look at my calendar for the rest of March, I expect that trend to continue. But in a way, overall, I don't feel guilty about that, because the Cubs are a team of established players. Other than some competition, there's not really any, there's not much other competition as to who's going to get a spot on the field. There aren't any players that we're like really excited to get a glimpse of. But I will say what I miss is in not being able to watch games and listen to games that much this week. I miss the sounds of baseball and the pace of baseball, and I just think the game itself is therapeutic. So that's what I missed this week. But what did we not miss? what takeaways do you guys have from this week's worth of games?
Yeah, just to kind of add on to what you were saying, I always happen to tune in. I listen to some, but then I happen to tune in when all the starters are out of the game a lot of the time and things like that. But I'm hoping to kind of follow a little bit more closely here in the next few weeks. But of course, I'm really looking. I'm looking at the the injured players from last year, like Darvish. I thought it'd be funny to pretend like they added him in the off season, like it was a shrewd move for them to go out and get him this off season. But I don't know. It's just the front office kind of has a chance to. I guess we're going to talk about this later, but so far so good. He faced 7 today. He threw 27 pitches. He threw for a total of 40 pitches if you factor in bullpen time. But he walked 1 and struck out 3 today. And he said some of his quotations today were a little, I don't know, overeager and too superlative. Like he said, he feels the best he's felt in his career today. And he said that he had the best stuff in his life today.
Oh no,
oh, man.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
It's like
someone hand him a piece of wood.
Let's calm it down just a little bit. But I mean, he did touch 97 miles per hour on the fastball and had sharp breaking stuff today.
Well, I mean, I guess that's a good sign that, like, after injury, I mean, if let's assume that that's actually true, and he's never felt better in his career than he did in this outing today, the 7 batter outing. But I mean, if that kind of like says where his body is, and as far as injury recovery goes, I mean, that's a good sign. And I would prefer that the best he's ever felt in his career is during a regular season game. If it was a postseason game, that would be tremendous. But
that would be tremendous. But he was supposed to go 3 today, but then the Cubs scored like 8 runs in the in the 3rd inning, or the bottom of the 2nd inning, I should say.
Right.
And so they just went ahead and moved him over to the bullpen to finish his pitch count. But yeah, I mean, he was rusty in his first outing. But the key for me is that there's no pain. That's what he said both times that he got through these starts with no pain, and he's feeling good. So, but he added that command today, I guess, and so that was really good to see, or hear, I guess, in my case. But I'm really just kind of keeping an eye on him and hoping that he can be a big part of this rotation, especially like if we're looking forward and thinking, well, maybe these older guys like Lester and Hamels could have the potential to maybe have a little bit of a down year.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a healthy Darvish and an effective Darvish, I think, gives me a lot more confidence in this team because I know that it's easy to say that a bullpen is, what would concern you most about a team. The offense doesn't really concern me about the Cubs. For me right now, it is just the starting pitching, and I think partially because you've got, two 35-year-olds and a 32-year-old, and then there's not a lot to fall back on. So I think it's a really good sign to see him pitching well and feeling well.
Yeah, I think it's easy to forget how good Darvish was too, given that we haven't seen it with the Cubs yet. So, let's hope we can. I think
my favorite. I mean, it's a terrible. Okay, I don't want to word it that way. Well, maybe I do. I don't know.
You just said,
"Oh no."
Okay, so I don't know. I guess if I ignore who it was against, my favorite Yu Darvish memory, my worst Carl Edwards Jr. memory is when remember when he walked him with the bases loaded in the playoffs. That was awful. But Darvish was really excited, and I don't know. I guess when I think I'll be honest, when I think about Yu Darvish, that is the moment I think about, is him taking a walk in a playoff game against the Cubs.
Well, he probably smiled then, and then we're getting the kind of the classic Carrie Muscat story type thing of him smiling more now. He's been smiling a lot lately.
Yeah.
But he's trying to engage. I guess one other little storyline that seems like it's kind of a fluff thing is that he's trying to speak more in English, just give more interviews in English, and you can infer from that he's trying to connect more to fans and his teammates. So that could be a good thing too.
Yeah, I don't pay too much attention to that kind of stuff. I don't know. I mean, it has been brought up.
Would you pay attention if you heard they were saving hotel soap?
Collecting it.
Let's just relive the IVMV hits on this 10th birthday episode. So what if you don't remember, we enjoyed tremendously the Carrie Muscat article about the Cubs basically stealing hotel soap, and then I don't know, weren't they
and then they donated it to
right.
They couldn't probably afford to buy soap themselves.
They probably wrote it off too.
Okay, well, I'm gonna right this ship here, folks.
Please do. Please do
talk more about spring training. Well, but you guys touched on pitching a bit, and there's not a lot to be read into on the offense, but I do think, and we've said this before, but I think KB looking like old KB is a really good sign. He had another home run today. Basically, anything that indicates that he's not hurting anymore is a good thing. So I'm happy to see that. I also wanted to call out Kyle Schwarber, a bit of a kind of an anomaly offensively that I think this early in spring training, a lot of players, power hitters especially, are just looking to do damage and take some good swings. But in 6 games, he's 4 for 8. He's got 2 doubles, but he has 8 walks and just 2 strikeouts. So he's not swinging and missing a whole lot. And it looks like he must be intentionally trying to see pitches, to look at pitches. And then when he gets the pitch he wants, to try to do damage. And so, we're talking about 6 games and not a lot of at-bats, but the fact that he's got 8 walks in that few at-bats, I think is pretty encouraging. And again, it's lesser pitching, not a ton there, but I think that's pretty good, because this is the on-base Schwarber that we expect to see, and also with the potential to do damage once he gets a good pitch.
Yeah. He's actually trying to bait us into guessing that he's going to steal more bases too. I think he's, yeah. So I think he's going to run a lot. I think we're going to see a Ricky Henderson-esque year from him.
So that'll be an over/under again this year.
Yeah,
no doubt.
20. Kyle Schwarber stolen bases 22, and one of us will take the over.
No, well,
instead of like multi-steal games, we should do an over/under with him. That's just the number of overall steals.
Didn't he end up with like 5 or something last year? I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, but well, I actually I don't know if you had looked at my notes, Kurt, because I wanted to talk about Schwarber too, and you basically said everything I wanted. No, that's okay.
I honestly didn't even know that. I didn't see that.
That's all right. No, but I want to echo what you said, because I think that it's a really good sign in that he is seeing the ball well, and I think that I think that's you remember in 2016 that they kind of said, like, after he was injured, remember he was like in the cages, just like not even swinging, but just watching so many pitches come in that he felt like he had really good command of the strike zone. And I don't think we've seen him not have good command of the strike zone necessarily, but I think that right now he's kind of showing that he definitely is seeing the ball well. And, I think that makes him an even more lethal hitter when he's not falling for, borderline pitches that maybe he wouldn't get the best contact on, or just being tricked. I'm sure he's a big hitter, so we're going to see that type of stuff. But I think it's a really good sign that he's appears to be seeing the ball really well right now.
You just copied what I said, Corey. So.
Now, so for me, I think what I was most interested in this week, and I mentioned this on the last episode, was just that the starting pitchers would actually make their appearances, and we did see that. I was hoping we wouldn't see any like starting pitchers scratched from their scheduled outings.
Men of their word.
Yeah. Well, it's just, there's a lot of this early in spring training. It doesn't take much for someone to say, you know what, let's just skip you, and we'll check back in a couple days. They don't want to, make any injury worse by pitching when they don't need to. So I just thought it was a really good sign that they actually did pitch. And like I said a few minutes ago, I think there is a lot of pressure on this rotation, and I think that there are a lot of question marks with who could potentially step in and fill in during if there was some sort of injury or whatever, or ineffectiveness. And so, I am nervous about injury with this rotation just because of their age and some history in there. But, I think pitchers, for the most part, they're not really attacking hitters. They're not approaching hitters like they do during the season, especially this early in spring training. They're just probably working on specific pitches and getting comfortable rather than worrying about how many strikeouts they're getting or how many runs they let up. But it's good to see, it's good to see that locating pitches doesn't really seem to be an issue for anyone right now, except for like Darvish maybe in that other outing. But
not even Tyler Chatwood.
No, right. Yeah. And so I guess, we'll see how that goes over the next couple of outings by each of these pitchers. But yeah, like how Chatwood is pitching is like very encouraging. I would say exciting.
Even if
almost.
If they just end up trading him or
exciting.
something. He's nice to just have there until the end of spring training, at least.
Right. Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah. So, as far as other, individual players, which right now is just, I don't think there's too much of a point in talking about, there's individual things to be excited about. Like, obviously Bryant seems to be, have his home run stroke back, and, like we've talked about with Darvish and stuff. I also wanted to bring up Contreras, and he's these stats are from before today's game, but he has 2 home runs, which doesn't mean much in spring training because he hit one off Brett Kennedy of the Padres, who has 6 games of major league experience, and then he hit the other one off our old pal Jesse Chavez. And not that those aren't good pitchers, but they were likely working on specific things too. So
Sure, and just maybe even just fastball command. Jesse, I will never play for another team, Chavez.
well, I don't think he wanted to. But regardless, like, how Contreras is playing is a good sign right now based on how his season ended last year. And we don't need to go through all that again, but let's hope that Joe has.
I'm still pretty concerned about the potential, like, Contreras running out of, running on fumes toward the end of the season if they overuse him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I
mean, I would
I just think
love
that's
to
all.
see Caratini play more if like, I don't know, if their fortune allows for it, I guess.
I don't think you can even say if your fortune allows for it, because I think that would be the situation that they would have talked about in September. Oh, well, we need him in there because of his bat every game, but he wasn't producing in September. And so, really, even if the fortune allows you to do it, it's not going to do him any good, and it's not going to do the team any good. So, I don't know. I'm still not happy with the backup catcher situation, and I feel like it's, if they don't make a move yet here before the season starts, I would have to think at some point during the season that's something that they visit, because I don't know. I feel like there's not the depth in that position right now at the upper levels to really make me feel. I'm not comfortable with Caratini, Taylor Davis. If something were to happen to Contreras, I just think they need something more significant to fall back on.
Yeah, I do think if that situation happened, they would. I think there's probably a feeling in the front offices that a veteran backup could be had at some point later in the season. So if something terrible happened, you just fill that need when it happens. But
then you're trading away more of, again, like, that's where I don't care about Ricketts' money. And so I would much rather see them spend in the offseason than, trade away more talent that of an already depleted minor league system. So I feel like for what that position is, a backup catcher, like, that's not terribly expensive. But I don't know. That's that kind of like is a good segue into our next topic. So with Harper signing with the Phillies, I guess we can assume that the Cubs aren't.
I think the Cubs still are going to still try to get him.
They're going to trade.
They're making a late push.
Oh man,
that would have been great. So I would assume you guys saw where Harper said something about bringing the World Series back to DC. That would have been pretty great if he would have slipped and said Chicago. Oh man, that would have been tough.
Philadelphia is already trying to get some of that money off the books.
He's going to rename his dog Liberty.
So let's assume that the Cubs don't make any more moves, because I don't think we have any reason to believe that they would. So I'm kind of curious how you guys grade this offseason in regards to free agency and trades.
Well, do you want Negative Nelly to go first or last? That would be me.
Okay, let's go most positive first.
Okay, well then I'm gonna bring it up at the end.
Okay.
So I think that the Cubs front office and / ownership could end up somehow looking good after standing fairly pat this offseason, as I kind of alluded to earlier, having Yu Darvish and Chris Bryant back healthy and sharp as they've looked so far this spring will feel like pretty significant addition. So maybe they'll get lucky and in a way obfuscate the inaction. What if Morrow comes back strong too? All of that's gonna together look like they were prophetic in their stagnation. So I don't know. There's things I like about what they did with the money that was made available to them, which by all accounts wasn't much. Like the Brad Brock signing. He's the guy that really got on track last season after being traded to Atlanta from Baltimore, and I think he'll be good for the Cubs bullpen. But I don't know. When you look at the annual value of Harper's contract, it's frustrating to see, since that number seems like it would have been very attainable for the Cubs. I think Caratini, speaking of the frustration with not grabbing a backup catcher, is capable of more with the bat than people give him credit for. And, look at his minor league numbers, and then also consider that he hasn't gotten consistent playing time at the major league level. But, is he capable of more with very little playing time, limited playing time still going forward? Maybe not. So, I don't know. I'd say C minus, D plus, somewhere in there as far as my grade.
So for me, I have a hard time even considering giving the front office a good grade. I think even if those things do play out, like you mentioned, Andy, with basically, them feeling comfortable with the team they had, and part of me totally understands that. I mean, if you have everybody come back and perform the way that that they're capable of doing, then this is a really good team. That's probably one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the National League, if not on all of baseball. But you're not really giving yourself any sort of wiggle room or any cushion if those things don't happen, or other players that performed well last year but then this year don't. I just feel like if you're just relying on what you have and knowing what they're capable of, it just when you factor in the whole Windows situation and all that, it doesn't make me feel comfortable that they didn't do much to improve. That said, it's not a complete criticism of Theo and Jed and their team, because it's likely that ownership just did not give them the resources to do much this offseason. And it felt like things got off to a good start with signing Hamels, and that was pretty much it. And Hamels signed like a week or 2 after the season ended. I don't see Hamels duplicating what he did with the Cubs last season, so part of me has to wonder if that money would have been better spent on one of the free agent pitchers. But yeah, I mean that move happened right after the season ended, so it seemed like the Cubs were going to move quickly to get their roster improved for this 2019 season. And so they signed him, and then nothing for 6 weeks, and then they signed Daniel Descalso and throw in some bullpen arms like you mentioned, Brad Brock. I mean, I do like that signing, but here we are, and that's it. Is Daniel Descalso basically, other than Cole Hamels and Brad Brock and some other bullpen arms, that's it. And I think there's, like I said, truth to the Cubs being confident in the lineup that they have, and they had amazing opportunities to make the team even stronger and like significantly stronger yet. And there's no guarantee that this 2019 Cubs team won't be impacted by injuries and weather and scheduling bad luck and things like that. And I hate to assign a bad grade to a front office because of the role that ownership plays in the offseason moves too, and I think especially this year. But I can't see giving the Cubs as a whole anything above a D. And I'm really disappointed that Tommy La Stella is now with the Angels. I find that very frustrating.
Yeah.
But overall, I found the moves they made and the lack of moves, the moves they could have made and chose not to, I find it all pretty disappointing. So,
as a little side note, I mean, I'm pretty interested to just kind of follow the exploits of Tommy La Stella, and hopefully he gets more playing time with the Angels, and gets more of a chance to prove what he can do on a as a regular everyday player. I don't know what their situation is.
I don't think
I don't know.
Going to be a regular everyday player.
I don't know. I feel like I feel like he was maybe given more of an opportunity. I say I like the Angels, and I have no idea what their situation is, so I don't know. But
anyway, I don't know
I actually
either.
think he'll get fewer off the pinch hitting appearances, and he might get more starts, but I don't think he's going to be an everyday player.
I don't know. But and if he is, this is probably was a move that's better for La Stella in the long term. But I really like what he brought to the team, and so I find it disappointing that he's not on the team. But all right, Kurt, drop the hammer.
All right, here we go. And I want to note too that my grade groups the front office with ownership. I'm not going to differentiate between the two. I think, like you said, that maybe the front office didn't give them much money, but I'm going to just lump them all together and go ahead and give them an F, and if
That's what you
possible, an
guys
F
get.
minus. Can you give an F minus,
Yeah.
Andy?
I mean,
you give
once
less
you're
than
in the F
Taylor?
territory, it really doesn't matter a whole
Oh,
lot.
well, maybe in baseball terms, if it were WRC plus, I'd give them a 1, which is not good.
Just be sure to use
Oh,
lots of red ink too.
yeah. And I'm exaggerating a bit, I have to admit, but I'm going to run through some bullet points and we'll see how you feel. But we're
Sound
talking
like
about
Skip Bayless right now.
that's right. Are you going to like mute me? No, that's a different show where they like cut people off and they freeze. Um,
No, because I
But-
probably agree with you. So
we're talking about the best free agent class in a generation. We're talking about talent that's highly undervalued given the current CBA. We touched on that earlier. $30 million spent today is less than $30 million 10 years from now. And you've got a window of controlled young talent that's unprecedented in Cubs history. Like, this is the best team we've seen. And then you've got revenue coming on the books from the TV deal. So we're 1 year out from that. That's a 1 year gap that you've got to jump. And not only did they not do anything, they didn't sign any of the big name players, which I could accept if they had sort of put their hat in the ring and said, look, we're going after these guys. We want to be the best team out there. But they didn't. They bowed out. They said, we're not even in it. Tom Ricketts said, we don't have any money. They just backed away slowly. And I think that's not the aggression I would like to see from a top team in baseball. And, they just they gave up. And I think that's unacceptable. And I think also you look at the history and think, well, this is a smart front office. They don't spend money where they shouldn't. But this is the same front office that signed Hayward, Lester, Zobrist, Darvish, the front office whose analytics were so great that they signed Chatwood, who's making $13 million a year. And you can't argue that Harper isn't 2 Chatwoods. So I just
There's
at
some
this
math
point,
for you.
I just can't accept that, like, in the world of baseball where it's all about posturing and it's all about and let's just add in the fact that the rest of the NL Central got way better.
mm-hmm.
Whether or not you believe any of those teams can win it, they got a lot, but the Central's a lot more competitive this year than they were. And you did nothing. And I think that, you just had to go out and, like, basically, I don't know. I don't want to say something like inappropriate, but like in a sort of like war sense of like, you get the opponent down, then you keep them down. And signing one of those guys would have just sent the signal that the Cubs are the new Yankees. And, we're just going to do whatever it takes. And they didn't even say they would try to do that. They just said, nope, sorry, we're not that team. So see you later. So,
well, and to go along with the NL Central making itself better from top to bottom, except for the Cubs. If the Cubs come up 1 game short again this year, if the Cubs, anything, I think anything that is short of the World Series, you just have to question, like, well, would this player have made a difference? Would this player have made a difference? And I feel like the Cubs really kind of opened the door to that type of criticism because they did nothing. It's not like they can say, well, we thought this player was going to be a better, investment or a better player than this player, but it didn't end up that way. Like, you did nothing. You chose to do nothing. And so now, like, if they don't win, and all these other teams, not only did other teams make themselves better, there are still players out there. Like, the Cubs could still go out and do something. And I honestly, like, couldn't point to, well, I could point to one that I would like to see, but I mean, I don't, I guess my point is that they have really kind of like opened the door to really, valid criticism of them if it doesn't end in the World Series. And I wouldn't say like they have to win the World Series. Although if they came up a game short in the World Series, you'd have to say the same thing. Like would insert player name have been able to do something in this situation or whatever. I mean, the criticism is going to be there, whether or not it's completely valid in one game or whatever. But anyway, they come up a game short. Yeah. All you can do is think like, well, who's out there that could have made a difference, and you chose not to be in on them because of whatever
money.
Whatever small amount of money. Like fairly insignificant, really. I mean.
Well, and I think that there's, I suppose some criticism of me could be that, well, maybe you don't believe in the team we have. And I think I would argue the opposite, that I recognize how bleeping good this team is. And to not add to it, to me, is such a shame because they are so good. There's so much talent on the team. Javi Baez is like peaking. Well, maybe not peaking, but he is on the rise. Along with all that other talent, KB coming back, and like to not add to that and say like, we are World Series or bust, like we are winning this thing, and like we're in the window, the window is wide open, and you just said, well, I don't know, I just like this sort of tepid like, wet blanket approach to free agency. I don't know, I don't buy it.
I mean, again, I think that ownership controlled that whole situation. I think if Theo had his opportunities, I think there's probably a lot of players he would have liked to have gone after. And honestly,
he has some sweet books he has on his wish list this year for Christmas.
They're very expensive.
We gotta have money to get those books.
Yeah, and I will say, I've definitely heard from listeners who are don't particularly enjoy us having more negative views of anything involving the Cubs. And, I do look forward to the Cubs playing real baseball where we don't feel the need to analyze off-season moves or lack of moves. I'm ready for baseball to start, and let's see how this thing plays out. And, I do kind of look forward to not having whatever off-season thing is, in the right in front of me. I look forward to that being behind me and to focus on the things that I do enjoy. And, I think there are I think even in spring training, we're seeing a lot of really good signs that, things that will hopefully lead to success with this team. And so, and contribute to success of the team. And so, I'm really hoping for those things. And I don't want to see the Cubs come up short so that I can say, oh, well, see, they should have made this move. I don't want to play that role. I'd rather celebrate the Cubs winning. So, I don't know.
But still, they should have made the move.
Right.
Well, let me just put it this way. They should have at least pretended, and said, hey, we were in for 275. We just didn't get there. Sorry. And I'd be like, good for trying. But no. They just gave up.
Yeah. So, well, Kurt, you brought it up. So let's talk about the Sinclair, the TV deal. We got more news, which just made us more frustrated because it was like actual numbers of what kind of money we're talking about. And although it's not like extreme money like we've maybe seen it with other TV deals, it's still really good money, and money that can impact a team, and can impact a team within a year from now. And like you said, it would have been nice to let them kind of like bridge that with other money.
Right. Yeah. So we've discussed the kind of like broadcast details of the deal. I think not a lot's changed there. So I'm going to kind of just pass over that. And, but as far as the revenue side, what it means for the business is that the Cubs, well, let's just say there's no solid numbers yet. A lot of this is going to come down to what Sinclair and the Cubs are able to get from their broadcast partners, and what that cost ends up being to the subscriber. There's still some details to be worked out that will affect the revenues, but on the low end of things, the Cubs are probably looking at between $40 and $50 million per year, in what I've seen as, in quotes, free cash flow. starting in 2020. So that's basically, that's money above anything they would have made in the past to just kind of do whatever they want with. Like, for example, sign Bryce Harper. But that's the low end of things. And at the high end, if they were to net in the area of like 1.5 million per game, and to put it in context, I think the Dodgers are about 2 million per game. And of course, like you kind of touched on, this isn't the Dodgers deal. It's not quite that big. But if they were to get to that number, they're looking at 70 million per year in additional revenue. So it's a lot of money. I mean, and this is just one revenue source. So the additions are vast, and they don't start till 2020. But like you said, you can kind of bridge that gap until 2020 and then kind of let the money flow in from there. So that's what we're, rough numbers looking at as far as what it means for the business.
Yeah. And I look forward to getting more details. And I think, there's a lot of variables with this TV deal. Exactly what it looks like with the individual cable companies and, things that are way above my head. But I feel like those are some kind of rough estimates now. And I would expect that we'll get solid numbers as all the pieces start falling in place. So,
yeah. And they'll probably still be a little, vague. I mean, the Cubs aren't going to just like write it out how much, but thanks to Bleacher Nation, Cubs Insider, they'll do the hard work of crunching those numbers, I'm sure, because that's where a lot of this stuff came from, and they'll tell us a little more accurately what it actually means in numbers.
Yeah. I just looked at the chat, comments that people are leaving, and on Periscope, Twitter. People are asking if that will be part of the MLB extra innings or MLB TV, and yes, that won't change any of that at all. So you'll still be able to get the games that way, and just pay the one fee to Major League Baseball. So
as long as you don't live in the blackout,
right? Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yes. Those wonderful blackouts that are never going away.
Not changing.
Yep. So as far as the upcoming broadcasts go, this upcoming week, we have another full week of Cubs spring training games. I think they have an off day like next Monday, but this Monday, probably today, the day that you're listening to it, if you're listening to the podcast, the Cubs play the Reds at Goodyear. That is a Cubs.com broadcast with our friend Mick Gillespie. The Cubs play the Angels in Tempe on Tuesday. That game will be on MLB.TV via the Fox Sports Arizona broadcast. So I'm hoping I'm going to be able to watch that game. Wednesday and Thursday, the Cubs are at Sloan playing the Royals and the Rockies. Those are both Cubs.com broadcasts. On Friday night, the Cubs play the Mariners, and you can listen to the Cubs.com broadcast, or the game is being broadcast by the Mariners on MLB.TV. On Saturday, there are split squad games, the Angels at Sloan on Cubs.com and the Giants in Scottsdale. And then Sunday, the Cubs play the Brewers at Maryvale, and that is on The Score and WGN-TV. So 3 MLB.TV broadcasts, 1 on WGN-TV. The 3 that you would be able to watch on MLB TV are Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. And then 1 game on the radio, that's Sunday's game, and the rest are on Cubs.com. So let's wrap up this episode with a segment we call Ivy Miscellany, where we share other things we are into. Kurt, you want to go first?
Sure, I will do that. My wife and I have been listening to the new Brandi Carlile album a lot. It's called By the Way I Forgive You. And she got a lot of Grammy hype. And I can honestly say I didn't know anything about her until the Grammy hype. And we started listening to it. It's a really fantastic album. So I recommend it. And she'll also be playing at the Hinterland Festival in Iowa this summer. So that's got a really good lineup. So I think we're looking at how we might make that work.
Yeah, I've looked at that.
Because also Casey Musgraves is going to be there too. She won Album of the Year. So
cool. I'll have to look at that.
Nice.
A couple of years ago, I looked at their lineup and was tempted by it. So I'll have to check it out again.
Yeah. They usually have a really well known. I can't. Boy, I don't know. I don't have the lineup pulled up, but they don't have quite the big name. Like I think last year they had Willie Nelson. So of course that's a huge name. But this year they don't have quite the big names, but a really solid lineup top to bottom. And we would mostly go, I think, to see her. I think that's how much we like this album. So
I think John, our listener, that's in In-House Prowlers, I think they've played it before. I think that's one reason I was tempted to go a couple years ago.
Yeah. So check that out.
Yeah, cool. Andy?
Well, I guess mine is going to seem like duh to a lot of people, but it's just chalk it up to old man and technology, I guess. But I didn't know you. I never thought to follow hashtags on Instagram. So do you guys follow hashtags on Instagram?
I don't think so.
I do. The oldest man of the three of us. And I follow hashtags. I win.
So I guess I didn't know that you can follow hashtags on Instagram.
Yeah, I the reason mostly because I know it is because all the banjo people I follow I started clicking on the hashtags, and then I realized that created a new feed, and that's how I figured out you could follow the actual hashtag.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So I mean, you just type in hashtag banjo, and then I think they'll just show every once in a while top posts with with that hashtag in your feed every so often. So it's pretty unobtrusive, and that way you get some posts that you otherwise wouldn't have seen that are pretty good. So for me, I follow some guitar bass, guitar pedals, that type of stuff, hashtags, and then through that, those have been popping up, and I've been looking up, these people's albums on Spotify and hearing some new stuff, that way. So it's been pretty cool. So I would encourage people just to, in the search dialogue, type in hashtag something that you love as a hobby and follow it.
Cool. So mine, I have a podcast suggestion, and it is a new podcast by one of our listeners, Phil Metzger. And his podcast is called the Flickering Light Bulb Podcast. And I've listened to the first episode where he kind of introduces the podcast. I would say it's for creatives and maybe entrepreneurs. My understanding is that in some episodes, he's interviewing people who have built companies and platforms or whatever, and he's sharing his own personal experience. He comes from a photography background, he said in that first episode, so kind of interesting. And then he got into video and stuff. So if you're a creative or entrepreneur, I would suggest checking out the Flickering Light Bulb podcast. He's got 3 full episodes out in addition to that one introduction episode. So I look forward to listening to the rest of them this week. I thought it was, for a first episode, I thought it sounded really good, and I was interested in it. So again, it's called the Flickering Light Bulb Podcast. So
nice. I have to check that out.
Yeah. Seems really cool. All right, so that will do it for this episode. It was brought to you by all of our Patreon supporters. We have some new contributors to thank this week. Jonathan, who did not provide his location, and Jason from Austin, Texas. So I'm going to share a trivia fact about the towns and cities that new Patreon supporters are from. I did that with Munich an episode or 2 ago, and I want to make this a thing. And I thought if I want to make it a thing, I'm doing the research, so it's officially a thing. I have the power to do that. So here's my trivia on Austin, Texas. An average of 20 million people visit Austin every year, and that is more annual visitors than Rome, Hawaii, and even London. So very popular destination. Have you guys been to Austin?
I haven't. I really want to get out there, but I haven't.
Yeah, I think I'm going in August. I'm presenting at a conference, I think, in Austin. So I'm looking forward to, I've been to Houston and Dallas and College Station and these other places in Austin or in Texas, but I've never been to the town that would probably appeal to me the most. So looking forward to that. So if you want me to share trivia about your town, you can support us on Patreon. So thank you to Jonathan, Jason, and everyone else who helps us keep this thing going through Patreon. If you like what we do and you'd like to become part of the IVMV team, go to patreon.com/IVMV. That's patreon.com/IVMV, or go to IVMV.com and click on support the podcast. So thanks to those of you who watched us live tonight, and thank you everyone for downloading and listening to the podcast. We will be back next week, and until then, Go Cubs.